I'm Dr. Anthony Harper here. Blessed to be with Doug Burton, and thanks for joining me about this topic of Nigeria. And so involved with this topic a lot, and you just got back from Nigeria. So there's a website for people to learn more about what you do about exposing the problem in Nigeria.
That's right, Anthony. Honored to be here. Yeah, I'm with truthnigeria.com. It's a website that was launched 7 months ago as a project of a humanitarian NGO called Equipping the Persecuted. And what we publish on truthnigeria.com is news about conflict, Christian persecution, and news about Nigeria that often doesn't get published in mainstream press.
Well, I sure have heard a lot about the slaughter of Christians. And matter of fact, there was a recent Fox News report that talked about 52,000 have been slaughtered so far. Well, since 2009, and most recently there were several hundred that were around the Christmas time. It's a very serious problem, and you would think that Nigeria would be put on the country of particular concern list, but it's not being put on that. I don't know exactly why, but so were you in northern Nigeria, where this is a really troublesome area where a lot of this persecution is going on?
I went to the Federal Capital Territory, which is Abuja, and I was in constant contact with our sources in Jos and in Plateau State, where the most serious killings were going on while we were there. The day we left, which was January 24th, there was a religious riot happening in Mangu, and it's probably still going on. Our reporters are in the zone reporters. Our senior editor is Mr. Masara Kim, who was born and raised in the city of Bokos, in the county of Bokos, which was the epicenter of the Black Christmas massacres that began December 23rd and went on almost continuously for 7 days.
Such a serious problem, and more than any other country in the world, would you say Nigeria really tops the list for all the slaughter and persecution of Christians?
Correct. Open Doors, which is a NGO that has tracked Christian murders and persecution for 40 years, says that at least 8 out of 10 fatalities that are due to persecution happen in Nigeria. It's a tragic proportion. At least 8 of 10 people of the Christian faiths who lose their lives are Nigerians. Some people say it's 9 out of 10.
Very troublesome. And I think about what happened in Israel with the brutal, the attack of Hamas. And it's a lot like what's happening in northern Nigeria with Boko Haram and a brand of ISIS there as well. And so would you categorize the brutality just as bad as what Hamas did?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a travesty that mainstream media hasn't seen this parallel, because the atrocities, the viciousness of the killings from October 7th in Israel exactly are like what the Nigerian Christians have experienced for more than 10 years, but they get so little publicity for it.
But what would you say to the State Department? I've been there recently to bring up this Nigeria issue, when the State Department says that they don't meet the threshold, that they don't meet the standard to be put on this country of particular concern. What would your response to the State Department about this issue? What would you want to say to them about why they should be on that list?
Well, Tony, I used to work for the State Department. I spent 2 years in Iraq as a public affairs officer. I did a position as public diplomacy officer in Kirkuk, Iraq, and I saw the eradication of Christians in northern Iraq during that time. And then later, I was a freelance reporter, and I was tracking the assault on Christians by ISIS from 2015. And frankly, there are a lot of parallels. It's one of the reasons that I got involved in the Nigerian problem. I would ask the State Department officers, what is the threshold for presenting it as a country of particular concern? The human rights community all over the world, in all European countries and in the United States, is aghast by the complicity of the U.S. State Department to cover up the genocide against Christians in Nigeria. Frankly, I don't think they have a good explanation. The truth is that the Nigerians themselves, the Nigerian government, didn't like that label because it embarrassed them. And Anthony Blinken decided before his first trip to Nigeria on Christmas weekend in 2021, he decided to drop the label because the Nigerians insisted upon it. He wanted to open up a new trade relationship. He wanted to start afresh. And so he got rid of their embarrassment for them. And my source for that is Assistant Secretary of State Robert Destro, who was the man who was in Abuja. He was the man appointed to make Christian persecution a big deal, and he was responsible for putting that label of country of particular concern onto Nigeria. And he visited with them in 2020, and he's reported several times how embarrassed they were. They simply didn't like it, because when they're embarrassed by a low rating in this area, it makes it harder for them to get international loans, and it lowers their standing in the eyes of the world community. But the fact is, they deserve a low grade, a terribly low grade. They are complicit in doing genocide in Nigeria. But, by some accounts, like Inter-Society, probably 100,000 people have been killed extrajudicially since 2009. So it's truly the human rights horror that the world needs to know about.
What about the International Religious Freedom Committee or association? I've heard reference to that. How good of an association are they in really speaking up about these atrocities?
The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom has recommended for years that Nigeria be put on the list of countries of particular concern. And one of those members is our friend, former Congressman Frank Wolf. He is very disappointed, and really all of USERF Commission is very disappointed that they couldn't get this category restored to Nigeria, because it would help mobilize public support in many countries.
So are you saying about the economic development, that is the big issue for Nigeria, that maybe the U.S. is more concerned about economic ties than they really are, protecting the Christians that are being slaughtered there?
Tony, it's obvious. Look at the speeches that Anthony Blinken made while he was in Nigeria. He dropped down on the day when there were historic riots, when one family of 9 people were burned to death in their own homes in Mangu County. He mentioned nothing about human rights. He's there talking about regional security agreements. Just look at his words. It's obvious he cannot see the genocide, and he doesn't want to see it. I'll give you another story. According to one of my minister contacts, he's a wonderful Baptist minister named Joseph Hayab in Kaduna. He was in a meeting with Anthony Blinken in November 2021. When Blinken was on his way out of the country, he went to Abuja. He had a special meeting called of some civil society representatives. And Joseph Hayab, who is the chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria in Kaduna, was one of the people invited to sit with him. And Blinken didn't bring his handlers with him. He wanted to hear firsthand what was happening to the Christian community. And in Kaduna, that's the venue of some of the worst massacres. So Joseph Hayab gave him chapter and verse for about 45 minutes. And I know this because 2 days later, I called Reverend Hayab, and he told me all of this, and I did a story about it for the Epoch Times. So he knows what's happening, but he doesn't want to mention it because it will mess up these fabulous deals he's making with African countries for climate abatement and agriculture policy. Anthony Blinken represents, in a wonderful way, the donor class in Washington, D.C. And he wants trade relationships, and he wants to get the countries of West Africa to buy in to State Department leadership on reforms, military advising. They want to sell weapons to these countries. Yeah, they want to do all of that, but he doesn't want to get into the weeds of the real problem, which is diagnosing properly what's causing this genocide.
Oh, there are there's a host of issues to deal with here. I think about the economic issues, so also militarily. So what would you say about the military advantage for the U.S. having this relationship with Nigeria, with Africa? Because I know that China has been interested in Africa as well.
China has been actively involved in the Nigerian economy for 30 years. China is Nigeria's #1 trade partner. China just opened up last year the biggest port in West Africa. It has been developing the new deep water port in Lekki. They opened it up last year. I did a story about it for Epic Times. China owns that port. Someday it will be a marine base for Chinese naval vessels. Okay. China is lending the money at undisclosed rates to the Nigerian government to build power plants, to build a railroad from the south of Nigeria to the neighboring country of Niger Republic. China is deeply involved in West Africa. The United States is way, way behind, and Secretary Blinken definitely knows it. He's concerned about China stealing a march on him in all these countries in West Africa. So he wants to put his best face forward. He needs the alliance with Nigeria. It's the leading company, biggest economy, most influential country in West Africa. So the last thing he needs is embarrassment from them. Actually, the Nigerians know that the United States needs them more than they need the U.S. That's the way they can behave this way. So we are in a pickle. That is why the State Department is willing to downplay this atrocious human rights issue in order to strengthen the trade relationship and the military relationship with Nigeria. Of course, just last year, we delivered the 12 Embraer fighter aircraft that they wanted. But the rule was the condition is that they can only use those aircraft in the Lake Chad area. Their biggest threat and the greatest loss of life is happening in the north central states like Plateau, where we see a Muslim, ethno-sectarian cleansing campaign. It's a religious war in which a stronger party, the radicalized Muslim militia, are overpowering undefended Christian communities. The issue is very complex because Nigeria has gun control laws, and the Christians are not allowed to carry sophisticated weapons. They have to defend their villages with pipe guns or self-made guns. The people attacking them are bringing assault rifles, AK-47s, AK-49s, and they come in very large numbers. The Nigerian military is standing down in Plateau State. They're not helping. And the word needs to get out that we're looking at a slaughter that could be averted. It could be stopped if the Nigerian government were simply told they're on the wrong side of history.
What's the advantage for China to be there over the U.S.? What does China stand to gain by having this access to West Africa?
China recognizes and has understood years ago that Nigeria is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. The Minister of Development just said a couple of days ago that Nigeria has 40 highly sought after minerals all over the country. It's wealthy in gold. Also, it's one of the major oil suppliers in the world. But most people don't realize how wealthy Nigeria is in mineral wealth. For example, in this state, in the state of Plateau, where 295 Christians were murdered over the Christmas week, that state has at least 20 very valuable kinds of minerals. It has tin, manganese, it has bauxite, many very valuable minerals there. So there's a fortune. There's the Minister of Mining Development said there's at least $700 billion worth of mineral wealth that has not been exploited in Nigeria. China knows this. Also, to the point of China's needs, Nigeria has vast areas of undeveloped farmland. China needs that for its population.
Okay, so the question is about who's going to win out on this matter. And as strategically, though, the advantage for the U.S. there regarding world naval power and so forth. the U.S. would have a significant strategic advantage by having this developed relationship with them. And are you saying that they'd be a lot better off for the U.S. to have this connection that would help as far as give them some victory over China in worldwide dominance?
Sure. It's the great game. It's the great game between major powers, the United States and the European Union on one side, China on the other side. Now, the difference is that this is the way the State Department people will put it. They'll say that we are the coalition of democratic countries, so we stand on the side of prosperity, mutual development, and democracy. On the other side, China doesn't have that model. They are bringing forth the model of state-controlled development, whereby the state chooses the winners and losers. The state really controls the economy totally, like it's done in its own country. So China seeks to represent prosperity based on the Chinese model, right? So it's two very different models. The Nigerians by and large do not want to ally politically with China because they want freedom. They want the freedom for all families to pursue prosperity, right? So, and they know that the Chinese intrusion will mean loss of freedom for them and control. They don't want that. So, and the Chinese, for their part, are very diplomatic, very cautious, very astute the way they are developing the economy. They are represented by hundreds and hundreds of small Chinese companies that do mining, sometimes illegal mining, and do all kinds of businesses. At least 800 students a year from Nigeria go to study at Chinese universities in Chinese. Then they come back, they get works in the industrial sector and for federal Nigerian agencies. So the Chinese have a very smart long-term development plan. The United States doesn't have a very clear development plan in Nigeria and is not very closely involved with the Nigerian economy, at least guided by the U.S. State Department.
A lot of serious issues regarding that China's aggression in the world. And once again, your website again for more people to
please come to our website. You'll get the real deal about the genocide. It's called truthnigeria.com, truthnigeria.com. If you would like to, if anyone on your viewing audience would like to talk to one of my reporters, we have about 10 or 15 on-the-ground reporters, some of them award-winning conflict reporters. If you would like to talk to them on the scene or talk to persecuted Christians and get an eyewitness view, let me know. My name is Doug Burton. You can reach me at 202-203-9883. My email is burtonnewsandviews@gmail.com. So there, I'm putting it out for the world. Just give me a call.
Okay. Well, I share this reports with a lot of people and with a Christian Newspaper Association. Maybe there's some other Christian newspapers that would interview you and any of these journalists. So I do share it. Appreciate you sharing, with our audience about these matters, and hopefully, things will improve there in Nigeria very soon. It's very disturbing to hear about all this persecution. So, thank you, Doug, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, thank you for your interest.